This is Total Retail Tech Insights.
The content retail executives need to optimize their use of technology throughout their organizations.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Tech Insights. I'm Joe Keenan, Editor-in-Chief of Total Retail. I am joined on today's episode by Fiona Stevens, the Head of Marketing at LoyaltyLion. Fiona and I will be discussing the work that LoyaltyLion does in the retail space and the services it offers and how it can help those retail executives in our audience. So thanks for joining me today, Fiona.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having me.
Joe, just to get us started, can you give us a brief overview of the work that LoyaltyLion does and then secondarily a little bit about your role at the company?
Absolutely, yeah. So LoyaltyLion is a data-driven loyalty and engagement platform. We work with fast growth merchants around the world who are looking to sort of differentiate and compete and retain their customers in what we often call the age of Amazon. In terms of my role, I'm head of marketing. I've been with the company for 4 years. Before that, I've worked in marketing for various agencies and SaaS businesses for coming up to 15 years, which is a bit scary. But I've been specialized in e-commerce and loyalty since around 2013, and it's just been so interesting watching that space develop and change over that time. In terms of my role at LoyaltyLion, it covers a lot of different things, a lot of different areas of marketing, which is great because that means I can stay close to the marketing that our customers are doing as well.
Yeah, and certainly the evolution in the industry, even it was moving quickly pre-pandemic, obviously greatly accelerated in the last couple of years. So certainly an interesting space to be in. I want to talk a little bit about what you term at LoyaltyLion as the opt-out error, and what you mean. First, what you mean by that, and two, why e-commerce brands need to be aware of it.
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of my favorite topics for discussion at the moment, and I think it's it's a tough time for marketers in a space where actually consumers are starting to opt out a lot more. So in terms of background and why we've started to call it this, I think since really the way back in the 90s, we had the inception of cookies, and then we just saw this explosive growth of digital ad channels, things like Facebook, Instagram. Now we've got TikTok advertising as well. We've been living in a bit of a golden age of marketing, and we've had a lot of very affordable, quite effective digital marketing activities and channels at our fingertips. But most importantly, each of those channels has given us a lot of data that we could use across all of our marketing. I think it was Colin Lewis, who is a journalist over here in the UK for Marketing Week, a retail publication. And he said that, I think it was around about 2018, he said there's never been a better time to work in marketing in terms of opportunity. But today, with things like GDPR over in Europe, the iOS updates coming in, and we've got the cookie apocalypse coming in 2023, I think now, that steady stream of data that we've been using for everything from personalizing emails with simple first name, etc., to cart abandonment emails, that data source is unfortunately drying up now. Consumers are starting to opt out of sharing their data. It's becoming easier than it ever has been for them to do that opt out. Even I click ask not to track on my phone quite regularly, purely because it's normally I actually am not even sure which one I've ticked. I just want the notification to go away. Right. So, I mean, this is a huge problem, and it means that retailers will actually no longer have what they need to retain new customers that they're bringing in through the door. So in terms of your second question, why do you need to be aware of it? You really need to be on top of it, because you're going to need to find new ways to motivate your customers to share their data, and actually for you to demonstrate to them that it's worth their while sharing it as well.
There are a couple of factors at play, in my opinion. I want to kind of get your perspective, Fiona, as we talk about this dynamic of, consumers being more aware of how their data is used. And obviously, the privacy piece of the conversation. We have that. And then obviously what's been born out of that is some of the legislation that we've seen, GDPR here in the States, the California Consumer Privacy Act. Some of this legislation has come into play. But conversely, consumers still want that personalized experience. They want the relevant communications from the brands and retailers that they shop with. So getting to that point with and taking into consideration the privacy regulations and considerations of your customers, balancing that and doing that well is a challenge. Tell us, from your perspective, what you're seeing in terms of the consumer, and then obviously some of the legislation that's come into play.
I mean, you're 100% right. It's the ultimate contradiction in terms, isn't it? You've got all this legislation and all these changes coming through, which are driven by the organizations, but they're also driven by consumers wanting to know that their data is being used responsibly, wanting to know that they can share it and trust the brands that they're sharing it with. But then on the flip side of that, you're exactly right. We've got consumers who are more demanding than they've ever been before. We want people to recognize us when we land on a website in the same way that they used to recognize somebody who walked through the door of a shop, who shopped there really regularly, and it's really interesting to see that we're demanding both as consumers, and the two do not really go hand in hand. And I think that's why focusing on retention is so important, because it's about building a relationship now. It's not about trying to get a customer through the door to make a purchase. It's about making sure that they come back to make a second purchase and a third purchase, and they build up enough of a long-term relationship with you. They see how you care about the same things and they're aligned with you in terms of values and things like that, so that they do just keep coming back and they trust you. And then that sharing becomes a wonderful self-fulfilling prophecy, because you are able to personalize the experiences which keep them coming back, but also are really valuable for those consumers as well.
So taking that, and we've talked a little bit, Fiona, about the the current reality of for marketers in terms of the privacy legislation, but also the demand for personalization as well. We talked about the opt-out era and why brands should be paying attention to it, and we didn't really discuss a little bit about what's the danger for e-commerce brands in this opt-out era that aren't considering it. So tell us a little bit about the threats that are involved, or the challenges that are involved for e-commerce brands now.
Yeah, of course. I think the really big danger is actually that you'll stall your growth. So we've seen, we've alluded to it already, we've seen e-commerce absolutely boom over the last couple of years. We had a long period of time where people only could shop online, they couldn't shop offline. So there's been this enormous period of growth. You've got more people available for your customer base than you ever have before, but there's the potential to wind up in a situation that's actually very reminiscent of offline retail in the past, where you're with the rising cost of acquisition channels, you're going to be paying over the odds to acquire footfall, but you're not going to have a way of identifying who's actually coming into your store or hitting your website, and then staying in touch with those customers over time. So you're going to be caught in a really vicious cycle of topping up the top of your funnel, but being unable to build the relationships that you need to get that second purchase, and then a third, and then ultimately build up your customer lifetime value. You're also going to be switching off a potential acquisition channel. If you've got customers who are very satisfied and you're building a great relationship with, they will go on to refer others or to leave you reviews, etc. And if you don't have that, then you're turning off an acquisition channel that you could be making the most of. So I think realistically, the biggest danger here is that you'll stall your growth in a period where a lot of other e-commerce brands are going to keep on booming.
Yeah, and to your point, the economics of it is, for many retailers and brands, that first-time customer online, they're not profitable. The brand isn't, that customer isn't profitable for the brand yet because of the rising acquisition cost. So they need them to come back and purchase again and again, build that lifetime value before that customer is profitable for the retailer, which leads us into the loyalty conversation. So tell us a little bit about why then loyalty programs become so critical to future growth opportunities for retailers and brands, and then how you can kind of turn things around in this opt-out era, so that danger of not getting that second purchase and not getting that word of mouth conversation doesn't become a reality.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you just pointed out. You're your first time purchaser is nothing like as valuable to you as somebody who comes back and spends again, not just because you're getting that second or third purchase, but actually because each time a customer comes back and shops with you, their average order value tends to increase as well. So, you know, that customer lifetime value piece is just absolutely essential. But your existing customers really are the answer here. So it's not even necessarily about a loyalty program and points and rewards and things like that, but it is about making sure that you know who your most valuable customers are. And we call it your insider community here at LoyaltyLion. You know, those people that do repeat purchase, but also talk about you, follow you on social media, share your news when you have it, etc. And if you can identify those most valuable customers and make it worth their while to share their data with you, you're going to keep them coming back and shopping again and again, because they're going to respond really well to all those personalized experiences that you're going to be able to deliver when they share their data. And we know from our research that over 50% of a typical store's revenue is coming from that top 20% insider community. So it really does make a lot of sense to focus there. So I think, yeah, communicating the value of sharing data to your insider community and making sure that they know that you're going to use it sensibly, you're going to use it responsibly and in a way that benefits them is really interesting. And actually the ways that we're seeing people use their loyalty programs to collect data is becoming very interesting in the last sort of year as well.
Yeah, and I wanted to follow up that you've kind of hit on something that I wanted to address. Obviously, we talked about the customer lifetime value and how that's so critical, but also that data piece equally is important for retailers. You know, around as you call it, the insider program at LoyaltyLion, so that you're able to personalize future experiences. You're creating that personalized you know, hassle-free shopping experience that you know the consumer feels that the customer, I mean, rather the retailer knows them, giving them what they want. It builds that loyalty as well.
Absolutely. And as I said, we're seeing people do it in really interesting ways. So we've got a pet brand, for example, and when you join the loyalty program, you fill in a profile about your pet. So you know, what breed of dog, does it have any medical requirements, etc. And then they're using that, they're feeding that into their ESP and personalizing email banners and things based on the breed of dog that you have. And you can do very similar things in the hair care space. For example, you know, you can send, when people create a profile, you can ask them, do you have wavy hair or curly hair? Do you have dry hair or oily hair? And then you can start personalizing the experiences that you deliver in that respect as well. So again, it comes back to that value exchange. If you deliver a personalized experience using someone's data, they know that it's worth sharing it with you and that there's a good reason to do so and you're going to use it sensibly.
Yeah, and I think that applies across a lot of more categories as well. You think about for apparel, size and fit, you know, makeup's
Absolutely.
another great one, an example of kind of getting the right shade of makeup depending on, you know, and how it fits your skin and or applies to your skin and your particular skin tone. And so there's some really great examples.
There are, and I think sort of the biggest missed opportunity, and this, I'm slightly biased on this because a lot of my background is content marketing, but what I'd love to see people doing is connecting that piece of the puzzle and that loyalty program piece with their content, for example. So, you know, people are putting great to-do videos and how-to guides and things out there, but they rarely connect it up with that loyalty profile. So, you know, you could be giving your loyalty program members exclusive content that not everybody gets, that links directly back to information that they've given you as part of that loyalty profile. But it's quite rare that you get a content marketer who knows what's going on in the loyalty program and vice versa. So
Yeah, the collaboration that needs to, you know, I think you raise a good point. It's sometimes these programs and departments, they sit and exist in silos and there's not really that collaboration that needs to be happening in order to create that seamless experience so that ultimately you're laddering up, you know, value to the consumer, to your loyalty member by having that kind of conversation.
Definitely. And it just, I think we underestimate how much a loyalty program can impact on the other marketing that you're doing as well. You know, it's literally a way of getting customer data that you can then use to personalize things. So every marketer in your team should know what data is available and where they can use it. You know, which tools can you deploy that data and insight through, so that you can use it in SMS, in emails, in your help desk, etc. I think there's a lot of missed opportunity out there.
So we talked about customers being a little bit more selective about the brands that they're sharing their data with. They want to have that trust of the retailer or brand that they're going to be sharing their data with. So with that in mind, what are some of the ways that retailers should build trust with their insider community so that consumers and customers want to share their zero-party data?
Yeah, as I said, it's about value exchange, isn't it? So showing them that they'll get something in return, but also making it really easy for them. So, they don't have to work really hard to get that personalized experience. And we always tell merchants to just start by rewarding even the simplest of behaviors. So it might be that you give points for account creation or for following on social media or for a customer who shares their birthday. If a customer sees that they'll get points that they can redeem if they tell you what their birthday is, but then their birthday comes around and they get a personalized birthday reward, they'll start to see that you're only using their data for their benefit. So I think that's an approach that you can then really develop and adapt, and you can start thinking about things like experiential rewards, early access to sales, for example, for that insider community. And then again, they can just see that the more they engage and the more they complete these profiles or take actions share data in return for points, etc., the more they're going to get in return. And I think the other thing that's really important with this insider community that we're talking about is, you have an opportunity to show that you align with their values. And that's the thing that builds trust. So, we're very much living in a time where shoppers are making decisions based on their beliefs, not just on product and not just on price. If you are a vegetarian, you want to shop with a brand that supports that. If you absolutely love animals and you want to make sure that the brands that you're buying for are not doing any testing on animals, all that's a slightly outdated example, but people are making decisions based on their values. Yeah. So you can really be using your loyalty program to better communicate those values. We've got people who are to go back to the dog feed example, in return for, you can exchange your points in return for a donation to a dog shelter, buy a dog dinner. We've got brands who are giving points for recycling makeup packaging, things like that. And I think it sounds like a separate point, but actually the more you can be doing to show your insider community that you care about the same things, the more you're building up that trust and the more they're going to feel comfortable sharing their information with you.
Yeah, I think that last point, sharing their information with you, but also the more that you're from your background in content marketing, a better experience, I should say, that they're having with your brand, the more willing they're going to be to share that with their family and friends, but whether it's, just word of mouth conversation, social media, obviously. So they're kind of doing some of that marketing work for you, your insider community, because they're getting great experiences. They're having these fantastic shopping experiences and they want to tell others about it. So you're getting that organic social coverage as well.
100%. I think the more you can make your customers feel part of your brand, the more they're going to talk about you. And actually there's the same, even on that point of making people feel involved, we've seen brands who are part their top tier loyalty programs can actually vote on products. They can be part of focus groups, etc. And I think when you start to include people in your brand and your product direction, they're locked in more and more and more, and they'll talk about it more. And then, that's how you extend your reach without having to pay a lot more to do just more of your day-to-day product advertising on Facebook or Instagram.
Yep. Your customer base is your greatest asset, and a lot of times if you can get them working for you, for your brand, even the better, right?
Absolutely. And also if you're running, a lot of brands are running influencer strategies now. And I think there's a lot of room to get those influencers talking about your loyalty program and the great things you're doing there as well as just talking about your products.
Exactly. Yeah. And you make a great point about kind of the social responsibility that factors into consumers' buying decisions now. They want to align with brands, not only that trust with their data, but to your point, align with the values that a consumer might have.
Absolutely, yeah.
So some of the brands and retailers in our audience may be a little further along than others when it comes to the kind of this loyalty journey and building their community and building the right experiences for that loyalty community. What are some of the first steps that retailers can take or should take when focusing on engaging their insider community, their loyalty program community, especially in this era of this opt-out times that we've seen?
Yeah, I think It's very similar to almost every other marketing initiative that you would look at, really. I think the first thing you need to do is step back and take a real audit. What marketing activity are you running, what channels are you running it on, and what technology are you using? And then it's about see how you can use that technology together so that you can drive those personalized experiences. So if you're collecting customer data, or if your loyalty program is giving you loyalty insights into how valuable a customer is, for example, then are you able to pass those data points into your ESP or into your SMS program? Is your loyalty program actually connected to your reviews platform, so you can incentivize that really good user generated content? I think if you can take a step back, look at your tech stack, look at your marketing channels, and see how they're working together, then you can see how you're going to drive much better return from every single one of those channels or tactics, but B, you're going to find it easier to deliver personalized experiences to that insider community. And I think the other sort of the key step is this needs an owner. Too often we see loyalty programs, they get set up and then they run in the background, and nobody really is taking responsibility for that much wider piece around retention and around building that insider community. So you really need somebody. It doesn't have to be a full-time job, it can be a part of a role that's carved out, but you definitely need someone to really own retention, to be focused on those KPIs, and to have a bit of a vision of how your insider community is actually going to drive that growth for your company over time. I think they're the two things I would start with.
Yeah, and then constant monitoring of those. You establish what the metrics are that are important to your program. You're monitoring them, and then you're able to optimize on ones that you see are opportunities for growth. There could be identified weaknesses that are also identified that where more effort needs to be placed, but kind of that observation point and then refining based upon what you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that optimization will look very different for different businesses. There are lots of people out there who are focused on community. They've got enough customers coming through the door. They've got the acquisition piece, but they don't have the retention piece, and that's what they're looking to grow. But you might have others who actually really want to focus on driving acquisition through that community. So yeah, knowing what you're trying to achieve, and then monitoring the KPIs.
Or it could be, building out those meaningful experiences that can suit you. What do your customers want from an effective loyalty program? It depends upon the brand. Obviously, that's another factor that you have to do that research in advance. Learn what your customers really want.
Oh, definitely. And I'm actually, it's really interesting watching loyalty in the luxury space at the moment. It's not if we take a $2,000 handbag, it's not a highly repeat purchase product necessarily, but luxury businesses are starting to realize that they need to keep their customers engaged in between purchases as well. They need to be storytelling. They need to be constantly putting out marketing and comms and content that keeps their brand top of mind in between handbag purchases as well. And so yeah, I think the types of rewards and the types of loyalty programs that you can run vary so much depending on what your product is, what market it's appealing to, and how the frequency of purchase there.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I want to close by Fiona, for those in our audience that are enjoying this conversation, want to learn a little bit more about LoyaltyLion, the services it offers, and how it can kind of optimize the insider community programs for retailers and brands. What advice would you have for them? Where can you send them?
Yeah, absolutely. And so best thing is probably to head to LoyaltyLion.com, but also I'd recommend following us on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter for sort of webinars and content as well. And we're quite close to launching our new and improved Loyalty Academy in the next few weeks too. So if you follow us on any of our social channels, then you'll be the first to know when that gets released.
Great. Well, I want to take the opportunity to thank Fiona Stevens, the head of marketing at LoyaltyLion, for joining us on today's episode of Total Retail Tech Insights, telling us a little bit about the work that LoyaltyLion is doing to help create those long-lasting customer relationships that can lead to sustainable e-commerce growth. So thank you, Fiona.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcasts for show notes. Total Retail Tech Insights is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Tech Insights.